Brace yourself. Better pass up anytime now. Collect yourself. Things will never be the same in a sad, sad world. Walk around the light a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So slip back in your hole.
All right, good morning, everybody. Good to be with you today. Have you ever found $5 or something in the pocket of an old pair of pants that you didn't realize was there? Or $10 or $20? So, last semester I said that, and then I went, is there anything better than that? And everybody responded, yeah, there are lots of things better than that. And so let me not ask that. Let me say, isn't that awesome? When you find money you didn't know was sitting there.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. At this time, teachers, please do uniform checks. Make sure those hoodies are taken off, headphones are put away, cell phones are stored away. Again, please help us by monitoring these rules. Make sure those students are in compliance. I appreciate you all.
Oh, so Nia, you said that's not awesome when you find money in an old pair of pants? Yeah, but now you have it. Now, most of us who are normal, because part of the conceit of this experience is that I'm not looking for the money, so I don't remember losing it. So it feels like a gift. And Nia's right, it's not a gift because the money's mine. Rhea, what's up?
There was one point where I returned a shopping cart and I found $1 in the cart.
Ooh, Rhea got rich. Sarah, what's up? Rhea said she found $1 in a shopping cart. Sarah, what's up?
I found $70.
Sarah found $70 once. I once found $180 on the floor in the back seat of my car. Now, because look, I had no memory of having lost $180. Hell, before 4 or 5 years ago, I have no memory of ever having $180. But there it was. When A.J. Swoboda opens up his book, Subversive Sabbath, that's the kind of picture that he's painting. He's speaking about, in this case, he's speaking about the Sabbath day as like money, and the best I can do is one. I'm pulling a one out of my pocket. As long forgotten money found in an old pair of pants. He tells more vivid stories than that. He tells the story of the person who bought a picture frame at a thrift shop or something, got the picture frame home, and there was an original or a first edition Declaration of Independence worth, I think it was $69 gazillion or whatever it was. What he means by that is that just like the money in my pocket or the $180 on the floor of my car was always mine, but I lost sight of it. Sabbath, from Swoboda's perspective, is something that's always been ours, part of our cultural heritage, because the Jewish and Christian traditions are integrally woven into our culture. But in really recent centuries, and more so recent decades, and possibly even more so recent years, the upfront, the overtly Christian nature of our civilization is sort of receding more and more into the background. And Swoboda is arguing that Sabbath is one of those older aspects of our heritage that we would do well to reconsider, do well to try to rediscover, like I found that $180 on the floor of my car. What got me thinking about leisure, the basis of culture. Just watch your step because there's a microphone cord across that. Yeah. What reminded me of leisure, the basis of culture, is that the way Swoboda portrays Sabbath as a long-lost treasure that we could do well to try to recover sort of sums up Josef Pieper's whole philosophical project. When we were introducing him last week, I said, the one thread that sort of runs through everything that Pieper does is the notion that perhaps as we've moved into this modern age and embraced all these new modern ideas, which is good, by the way. He's not wanting to go back in time to the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages sucked. But as we've moved into this modern era, perhaps there are some older treasures, older parts of our cultural heritage that we could do well to recover. Swoboda's book, I've said before, is really written explicitly and can almost be appreciated in its entirety exclusively for and by an evangelical Christian audience. Whereas Josef Pieper, the argument we're looking at, I think appeals to a much wider audience, although Pieper is also writing from a Christian perspective. This is my current active beverage. Leave it alone. What can I do for you? Okay, have a seat. One of the things that Pieper is criticizing about the modern age is what he calls the world of total work. This is Pieper's opponent. He uses, or almost uses, an even more vivid term. He actually literally speaks of an imperial spread of work, which I kind of take the liberty to translate into an empire of work. A notion that work has become so central to who we are that it's taken over our identity. And this is what Pieper is stepping forward to try to offer an alternative, but an alternative that's not new, rather an alternative that is like the $5 bill found in the jeans. You know, if you ask somebody, if you ask most people who are just a little bit older than you, right? So this doesn't apply so much to people who are still full-time students. But if you ask somebody who's a little bit older than you and then all the way up through the ravages and horrors of age, who they are, how are they going to respond? You ask a 50-year-old man who he is. What's he going to tell you? What's he going to tell you? Gavin's got it. He's going to tell you what he does for a living. 9 times out of 10, who are you? I'm a lawyer. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a construction worker. I'm a lord for a Colombian drug cartel. Well, whatever I do in our culture becomes. You ask me who I am. One of the first things I say is I'm a teacher, even though I've been teaching just over 5 years, and I've been me. There've been a lot of 5 yearses in my past, and yet even I answer this way. Pieper sees a problem with that. Pieper sees a problem with us identifying who we are, answering the who I am question, not with a statement about my being, but with a statement about my doing, about the activity I engage in, about the activities that I do. Someone remind me, what's the historical cultural context of this lecture? Pieper's, this is originally a lecture. It's 1947. It's Germany. What's going on? Rhea, come talk to me. Rhea, come talk to me. What's going on, Rhea?
This was right after World War II had just ended.
Yeah.
So.
And World War II, that was it was a lot of fun in Germany, right?
No, not really.
What? How come?
Ultimately, it depended who you were. If you were a Nazi, or if you were somebody that they wanted to have around, then yeah, it was total fun.
At first, maybe. Wasn't fun for anybody at the end, was it? Right? We've seen the pictures of the rubble again, which I'm not saying that the devastation of Germany in the end of the war was unfair, but I am saying it was unfun. Yeah. Thank you, Rhea. Thank you, Maddie. Did you have something to add? Yeah. So, and in this moment, there is a desperate need for rebuilding, for structural rebuilding, infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools, telephone lines, electrical lines. Everything needs to be rebuilt. And then also the rebuilding of the German people's soul. There's a serious denazification that has to go on, which raises a huge challenge. So we desperately need to do a lot of work, and we desperately need competent workers. We need engineers. We need electricians. We need plumbers. We need police. We need leaders. Well, 1947 in Germany, who were all the experienced, competent people in Germany in 1947? Nazis! Yes! Because if you weren't a Nazi, you didn't automatically go to prison if you didn't join the party, but if you weren't a Nazi, you didn't have a leading role in society. You were sidelined. So now you've got the scenario where there's a desperate need to purge Nazism from society. I was imagining taking a toilet plunger to the metaphorical heart, but all I did was this. So that's what this was. There was a need to purge German society of Nazism, but now you got the problem. You know what? I know a guy who could get this hospital built and up and running in 6 weeks, only he also built all the gas chambers. What do you do with that guy? Do you hang him or do you hire him? It's a real problem. And it's the kind of problem where it seems like the least relevant thing at this moment is leisure, free time, rest, and enjoyment. And it's into that scenario that Josef Pieper steps up and he says, that's exactly what we need. We need leisure. We need to break ourselves of this connection between our identity and our work. I want to look for a minute at... So here's Hitler. I don't remember why I just put this picture of Hitler by himself up there. But there he is. He's not cool. But look at all the people there show up to see him and are cheering for him. This is what I really want to show you. Hitler appealed directly and intentionally to the workers of Germany through his early years up and coming and all through his rule. The Nazi Party, Nazi is an abbreviation. If you want to, the full name of the party, at least translated into English, is National Socialist German Workers' Party. Hitler very consciously appealed to blue-collar Germans, people today we would call blue-collar Germans. He capitalized on what is a long-standing rift and tension between blue-collar, hard-working, small-town, agricultural, or in the modern age, industrial manual laborers, and know-it-all, big-city, fancy intellectuals. That tension, I don't know if you remember the trumped-up controversy over the Try That in a Small Town song that was going on over the summer. I don't know if your social media was flooded over needless arguing there. But literally, we've had that as long as we've had civilization. We've had that disconnect, that tension, where the workers and the intelligentsia distrust each other and look at each other with contempt. It's actually behind the plot of the oldest story that we have from anywhere ever, the Epic of Gilgamesh. That small-town folks, agricultural folks, and in our day, industrial laborers look at the white-collar folks, the big-city intelligentsia, as know-it-alls who will chase after every new idea and are trying to dismantle all the traditions that we hold dear in our civilization. And big city know-it-alls look at the small town folk, the farmers, and now the blue-collar factory workers as backward hicks. They look at each other with contempt. Hitler isn't trying to bridge that gap. He's trying to stoke those flames. So he appeals directly to the workers. And look how the workers are portrayed here. Right? Work is portrayed as what is giving these men their dignity. These men look like classical heroes, but they're not slaying dragons. They're not saving princesses. They are heroic because of their work. Hitler wants the men of Germany to say, who am I? I am a worker. Why do I exist? Why do I live? I live to work, and so my work will help build up the fatherland. And who is the... Maria Moore, come join me. And who is the enemy, we'll ask in a second, but Maria Mora's got a question. Hi, Maria Mora. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking.
So I have a question. Was that like a type of like propaganda for like to make men from Germany to like want to do or like be proud of being German? Because like I remember seeing this before. Like I saw that poster before, and I remember that they said that most of like the population of Germany like started like working because they wanted it to feel like they were like helping their country. I don't know how to explain it.
Clearly you do know how to explain it because you explained it perfectly. That's exactly what he does. So he uses the idealized image of the worker as propaganda to get the German people to A, begin to define themselves as workers, and through their work they bring glory to the fatherland, and through bringing glory to the fatherland they bring glory to themselves, right? And secondly, especially look at the poster on the left where he's shoveling stuff. He's not shoveling coal, he's shoveling people. Let me get the poster to the left on the screen, all right? So what is the coal, what is the trash that this worker is shoveling? Well, we've got a banker, and for Hitler, banker is code word for Jew. You've got communists, you've got fancy, big-thinking intellectuals. Let's just shovel them all away and throw them into the fire. Manny, come join me. You've got a question? Thank you, Maria Mora.
So I couldn't help but notice that they're both blonde.
Oh, yeah, that's intentional, too.
Yeah, that because it wasn't Hitler's perfect race, wasn't it? Blonde, blue-eyed, like Aryan people.
Yeah.
That's what I was noticing, and obviously the banker. So you could already see the roots of like anti-Semitism that he was.
Oh, sure. And he's not subtle about anti-Semitism either. That's he doesn't use the dog whistles, coded language that some people today will use to get their message secretly across. Hitler doesn't need a dog whistle when he's got a gas chamber. He's upfront about. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with all like the idealization of like blonde-eyed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men just working and slaving away, trying to get rid of the rich people who were historically, at this time, mostly Jews. And yeah, that whole mess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how Hitler's portraying them. Ms. Murray, yeah.
I don't know if you're going to go over it later, but I just wanted to ask, like, because I read the Pieper thing, he deems, like, work as, like, he thinks that work is not the end-all be-all.
Pieper or Hitler? I'm about to put my hand... Okay, we're going to... I'm just now setting it up, so hold that thought. So if Hitler's so interested in building a culture of workers, of self-identified what I am as a worker, does that mean Hitler has no place for the humanities? For art and music and literature and philosophy and history and scholarship? Does it mean he has no place for that? No, that he does have a place for it, but at least from Pieper's perspective, that place is a total perversion of what the humanities is supposed to be. Did I not put it in this? Oh, I guess I didn't put it in the presentation. Hitler has a place for the arts. Hitler is a painter himself. Here's one of his paintings. But for Hitler, art has a function. History has a function. Philosophy has a function. The art that Hitler supports, the poetry that Hitler supports, the music that Hitler supports, the philosophy and the history that Hitler supports, the humanities that Hitler supports are humanities which have been co-opted to serve the function of propaganda for him. What is art for? What is history for? What is philosophy for, according to Hitler? It is for the practical use of spreading Nazism. So, art and music and literature and philosophy, which makes the German people seem like the greatest people, all right, he will put that on a pedestal. But art and literature and history and scholarship coming from outside his own perspective, he will brutally clamp down on this. He burns it specifically, yes. See, instead of allowing art, music, literature, history, philosophy, instead of allowing the humanities to be good, to be true, and to be beautiful for their own sake, Hitler has enslaved the humanities to usefulness. And he has made usefulness his ultimate value, which means he then takes the artist, the historian, the philosopher, the musician, and instead of being one who creates for the sheer good of creating, transforms the creator into a worker. So now, the creators, the intelligentsia, those who survive Hitler's purge, are just another form of worker. This perhaps it will help you understand what I think is the most enduring point that Pieper makes in the entire text, which we'll discuss in a little more detail as we move forward, when he discusses the distinction between that which is intrinsically good and that which is instrumentally good, to elevate the useful, the practical, above that which is good in itself, is to overturn the whole order of reality, at least from Pieper's perspective. Because it is in contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, that is when one is put into communion with reality as it is, put into communion with existence itself, at least from a traditional perspective. If the language of God is part of your language, then it is in the good, the true, and the beautiful that one is to encounter that reality. Hitler has put a chain around the neck of goodness, truth, and beauty and made it the slave of function. Ladies, yes? Okay. Good talk. Oh, wrong PowerPoint. In Pieper's own day, because Hitler is in Pieper's past, all right? It's 1947. Hitler's gone. We've moved on. Good guys won. But it's not peace and harmony across my favorite thing to say, four corners of the globe. It's not peace and harmony. Now the dominant theme in the news of the day is the Cold War. Who remembers what the Cold War is? Who said that? Oh, okay. But I haven't heard from Kristen yet, so I'm going to have Kristen come tell me what the Cold War is. Kristen forgot. Miss Mari, what's the Cold War?
The Cold War was when the USA and the USSR were at odds with each other, and it was very crazy. Okay, it's called the Cold War because they never actually fought, but it was more like they were beefing with each other and threatening each other. They were like, well, you got a nuclear bomb? I got 800. And then they kept threatening each other, but they never fought. And then we had the space race, which was really cool. The Russians literally won that race. I don't know why we painted as the USA won. And then basically they ended up having what? Okay. Well, whatever they were, they ended up not killing each other and ended up signing like a little mutual agreement where it's like, well, if we kill each other, we'll end the world. So I guess we won't do that. But if you do it first, then I'll do it.
That's how the Cold War ends. We're at the very beginning of the Cold War, right? The United States and the Soviet Union have essentially divided the rest of the world up between them, all right? And what what really separates them, yeah, United States is a democracy, and Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin is a tyrant. He is a dictator. But what really separates the two is two different economic systems: capitalism and communism. What's capitalism? Naya, you want to take this one? Maria, what's capitalism? Short version.
Basically where we live in, where the big companies own everything and we can privatize kind of markets. Isn't it that?
So big companies own everything is a possibility. Privatized markets is the essence of it. Capitalism says government stay as far away from the economy as possible. Let the invisible hand of the market dictate what's going to happen. So let me give you an illustration. All right. So let's say Devaris. So Devaris starts a business. He invents something awesome. What do you invent?
Cow shoes.
He invents cow shoes, and the cow shoes take off. So Devaris becomes a multi-millionaire. All right? And capitalism says, good for you, man. Keep it up. Keep it up. Well, now, Maddie, come here, Maddie. Maddie's not a multi-millionaire, but she works for Devaris. So, who's got more money, Devaris or you?
Devaris.
Devaris, yes. Who pays you?
Devaris.
Yes. And so the capitalist would then say, maybe you get jealous of Devaris' money sometime. The capitalist would say, well, if you're jealous of Devaris' money, you invent something too. Because guess what? Maybe do you sometimes wish he didn't have that as much money as he had?
Sure.
Yeah, maybe you sometimes wish he didn't have as much money as he has. But wait a minute. The capitalists will point this out, and this is probably their strongest point. It doesn't benefit you at all for the guy that signs your check to have less money. The more money he has, the more can overflow or trickle down. We call this supply side capitalism, supply side economics. We all benefit from the generation of wealth. Thank you, Maddie. Now, the communist says, hang on a minute. Do you know what the real problem is? Do you know who's causing all of the trouble in the world? Devaris is what's wrong with the world. These fat cat, mega rich business owners. You think millionaire Devaris is in the factory forming the cow shoes himself? No. But he's controlled the means of production. And by controlling the means of production, he is keeping the rest of us dependent on him. He gets rich off the backs of our work, and we're left begging for the scraps at his table. You want to make the world more just? We've got to overthrow the Devarai. Would that be the plural of your name, Devarai? We've got to overthrow the Devarai of the world. All right? We've got to equalize everything to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. Workers of the world, unite, says Karl Marx. You have nothing to lose except your chains. And it seems as if these two systems of thought cannot be any farther apart, and that's why they're at each other's throat. But there's an interesting phenomenon. Whenever you have two systems of thought that seem so far apart. So, let's see. Maria Mora, come join me again. You stand right here. So, here's Maria Mora standing immediately to me. I'm going to check by making an L with my hand. Immediately to my right. Let's say I want to get to Maria Mora, but I want to go left to get to Maria Mora. What do I have to do to reach Maria Mora by going left? I have to go around the world. I have to circumnavigate the globe to get to Maria Mora. And it just this really doesn't seem worth it. I got to tell you, I'm sorry. It didn't seem like much payoff there. Maria Mora is the furthest person away from me on earth to my left. But by being so far away from me, when I look from the other perspective, it turns out she's also physically the closest person on earth to me, to my right. Pieper argues, thank you, Maria Mora. You can go back to your seat, but you got to go left. So, good luck. Did you try going left? Did you actually try going left? Were you going to walk around the world? How do I reach these kids? Pieper argues capitalism and communism are the same. Not that they are identical, but the same dynamic is at work. That by being so far apart, when it comes down to the nature of what a person is, they're actually arguing exactly the same thing. See, from a capitalist perspective, what gives you value? Money gives you value. All right? Now, anybody ever take a class with Mr. Roberts, social studies teacher, really good teacher? All right, got Mr. Roberts. Does anybody know who Kim Kardashian is? Do we know Kim Kardashian? Okay. Who has more influence in our society? Mr. Roberts or Kim Kardashian? Kim Kardashian. Why? What is Kim Kardashian famous for? She's and I don't mean to insult her as a human being, but as far as her professional work, what I know of it, she's just a machine that generates money for herself. There's like no skill. There's not even a product generated, and yet she has almost infinitely. I don't know if the words almost infinitely may not be meaningful. She has almost infinitely more influence in our society than Mr. Roberts. Because in a capitalist society, we value you based on the income you generate. In other words, we value you based on your work. Gavin, what do you want to do for a living?
I want to become an engineer.
Gavin wants to become an engineer. Okay, so let's fast forward 10, 15 years in the future. Gavin has successfully become an engineer, and Naya works at Taco Bell. Naya works at Taco Bell. Who do we value more, Naya or Gavin? As a society, Maddie's saying, Naya, is that how we will treat them? Are Gavin and Naya going to be treated the same way on a day-to-day basis? Gavin the engineer, you said engineer, right? Gavin the engineer, Naya the Taco Bell smith? No. We are going to treat them. We as a society will treat them as if Gavin is objectively more valuable. That hurt to say Gavin is valuable. But Pieper would say he is valuable, and so is she. Pieper would say here is a point where maybe a pre-modern perspective still has something to say. Because if you had asked this question to a student in the Middle Ages, you'd have to explain what an engineer is and what Taco Bell was. But then the medieval ethics class student would have said, the question's false. They are both of equal value. They are both of inestimable, infinite, intrinsic value by virtue of their humanity. And then the medieval student would have put parentheses at the end of the sentence, and he would have cited a passage from the Bible. He would have cited Genesis, I believe the 3rd chapter of Genesis, where God creates man and woman in his own image, and say, therefore, every person has intrinsic value simply by virtue of their personhood. Now, whether in our society all of us are going to accept all the claims that come along with the book of Genesis and the Bible are not. Is that something where we modern people are really better off for having left behind? The notion of intrinsic human value? The equal dignity of all people? Are we really better off for having outgrown that? Don't get me wrong. Pieper's going to criticize communism too, and I could criticize communism all day long. Not only partially because I grew up at the end of the Cold War, so I imbibed anti-communism, was sort of in the air that I breathed. And communism has real flaws. What Pieper's going to point out is communism does the same thing. What is your value in the Soviet Union? What is your value in the communist system? Your value is as a worker. Your value is what you do. In fact, we'll talk more about this a week from today in the One in the Many lesson, but in the communist system, you work and you work and you work, and that's what you are. Your individual identity is almost completely evaporated, and you become a cog, a part in the machine. Two systems so opposed to each other, capitalism and communism, and yet they're so opposed to each other that they almost destroyed the world out of their hatred for each other, and yet they end up presenting nearly the same thing. Pieper then cites Max Weber. Pieper cites Max Weber saying that one does not only work in order to live, but one lives for the sake of one's work. And as far as Pieper's concerned, that could have been said by a Nazi, a communist, or a capitalist. That's something they all have in common, that our purpose for being here is our work, and that's how we define ourselves, by our work. Pieper says this is immoral, and it's turned reality all the way upside down, which is when he makes his observation about this fun Greek word. My humanities alumni have talked about this with me in the past.
At this time, all varsity and junior baseball players, please report to the front office. All junior and varsity baseball players, please report to the front office for your game. Wish your Coyotes good luck. Thank you.
The Greek word skole, which means leisure, free time, rest, and enjoyment, but most of you probably know where this is going. Oh, I've even got on the board where it's going, so never mind. There's also the root of our word school. The English word school, the Latin scola, the Spanish escuela, the Portuguese escola. All of them are descended from this word that means free time, rest, and enjoyment. Does that sound odd to you, Maddie? You're laughing. We've basically named this place House of Leisure. So, Robert Zapata, you're asleep half the time, so it is kind of a house of leisure for you, but those of you who force yourself to stay awake, is that what it feels like here, Naya?
Absolutely, sir. This should be abolished.
It should be abolished. Does it feel like free time, rest, and leisure for you, Maria Mora, being here? Does this feel like the house of leisure? No, is that what you think when you go to school? Sweet, I can finally relax? No. So why now would we name this place House of Leisure? Well, to understand that, we've got to think about the situation in life of most people who've ever lived. Right? So let's say, I haven't run the number, but let's say the average age in the room is 16. Let's just say that, okay? By 16, for most of human history, you wouldn't be sitting in a room talking about big ideas and maybe having to do some math problems or read a book when you went home. By 16, guys, half of you would already been killed in battle. You're sent to fight for some landlord. He's not going to give you the good weapons, by the way. You're going to fight with your rake and your shovel. Ladies, by 16, half of you have already died in childbirth. Because most of history, you're going to be married off as soon as you're physically able to have children. And you're most likely going to be married to a much older man, not because the men of most of history were like sickos and perverts, but because of how frequently women died in childbirth. If a man wants, and how frequently babies die, if a man wants any shot at having a few kids that are actually going to live, he's got to marry as young a woman as he can. That's the existence of most human beings who've lived at least since the dawn of civilization. It's in comparison to that our scenario, our culture, where we value the intrinsic good of education so much that we allow you to take 12 years off from life. 12 years without, even as capitalist as we are, 12 years without generating any revenue, 12 years without work, at least without mandatory work, and to spend that time in the air conditioning discussing big ideas with your peers. Something most people in the past weren't able to do. And it's something that even in ancient Greece was available only to the incredibly wealthy. That's where the term the liberal arts comes from. You've probably, if you haven't taken my humanities, you've probably heard that term all your life and no one told you what it meant. Liberal means free. The liberal arts are those things which are explored and pursued by free people, as opposed to enslaved people and as opposed to the desperately poor. In Plato and Aristotle's time, you had to be super rich to go to school. And then you got to enjoy these arts of free people, literature and philosophy and music and the things we also call the humanities because they're roughly equivalents. Everyone else, for them, was the servile arts. And what's that word servile sound like? To serve, to servant, servus, Latin. It's the same word that one would use for an enslaved person. In fact, Greek, I'm going to put this one on the screen. We'll almost have to finish for the day, but the Greek language doesn't even have a word for work, or at least not one that's directly parallel. The closest they have, so there's skole, or scholia, and work, which is leisure. Work is scholia. What's it mean when you put an A in front of something? It's a prefix. It means not. Yeah. The Greek term for word just literally means not leisure. Aristotle paints a picture that is exactly the opposite of what Max Weber said, exactly the opposite of the Nazi and capitalist and communist visions. He says, we don't live for work. We work in order to be at leisure. That ultimately it is when we are free to pursue the things that we are passionate about, rather than struggling, striving to build in order to keep ourselves alive, that we are most truly human, that we are most truly ourselves. A lot more to say about that, and we'll pick that up tomorrow. That's all I need from you for today.
He's, okay. Well, one more point for today, and we'll do the rest tomorrow. You might have caught as you're reading, he doesn't like this term intellectual worker. And as you're reading that, you might be, why? What's the problem? What's he talking about? Well, first of all, what is an intellectual worker, this term he doesn't like? Well, it's a term that describes people like me, or lawyers, or politicians, people who don't work, don't labor with their bodies, but we perform the duties of our careers essentially with our minds. Right? He doesn't like the term because he doesn't like to think of, and he's one too, he's a philosopher and he's a teacher. He thinks it's a mistake to think of what we do as work. That my ability to stand here and do this and teach and then collect a paycheck to be supported, allowed to live by doing it, is a symbol, or is indicative of the fact that I don't work, that I've made leisure my life. He says, up until this time, the present day, at least from the point of view where someone who worked with his hands, the province of intellectual enterprise tended to be looked on as a kind of paradise, where nobody needed to work. At the heart of this privileged province lay philosophy, something at the furthest removed from the working world. Now, if I were to take a poll of all my fellow teachers, I don't know how many of them would consider what we do here at Four Corners to be living in paradise. But I kind of do. I often say that I'm the happiest person you'll ever meet. I get annoyed when I have students like Victoria and Hanson, but I'm the happiest person you ever meet. I don't have to work for a living. That's because what I do isn't work. What I do is leisure. What I do is about not being useful. My classes don't make you my classes aren't designed to make you a better veterinarian or a better architect or a better Burrito Smith or whatever. They are designed to make us better, period. What I do, what Pieper does, is designed to help people flourish and to thrive. What we do are things that are intrinsically good for their own sake, versus instrumentally good only because they're useful. So what Pieper's going to do next is Pieper's going to highlight 3 areas in which this empire of work, in his day it looked like the Americans and the Soviets weren't working together anymore, but they were philosophically, if he's right. This empire of work, this creeping movement to redefine our value based on our function, based on what we do. He's going to take a look at 3 areas where he thinks this is deeply misguided, and he's going to offer a response to each of those 3 areas. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. Questions, arguments? Victoria, anything else? Any other ways I can insult you today before the day's over? Or are we good? Always. We're always good. I like that. All right, thank you, Ken. Rest of the time is yours.
Okay.
A bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million bits and pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So get back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with